Thank you so much for arriving here. It is a great pleasure to greet you and to welcome you into this experience. My name is Francisco Jara, and I'm the author of the upcoming book, Giving Business Soul, The Rebirth of the Merchant. If I had to summarize in a few words the essence of the book, it is this. It is a book that illustrates how we arrived at this great junction in human history, and how this window of time is offering us an opportunity to create an evolutionary leap for our humanity, or ultimately face the consequences of the timeline that we are currently on. And the book places the entrepreneur at the center of this potential. But first, the entrepreneur must take a journey into the depth of their own soul, whereby I provide the readers language for intricacies of soul work, and more importantly, the frameworks that are necessary to do this great work. The work of discovering who we truly are, and then expressing that through the modality of business. These types of business models will have within them the infusion of soul, a philos, a love for our humanity. And organizations that have the love for our humanity as an ethos have the creative potential to begin the restoration and healing of our world. And it is clear the task at hand has a magnitude of such great proportion that we would not be left to accomplish it on our own without the assistance of heavenly forces. With that, the book is also bringing back to the human awareness a lost archetype, the archetype of the merchant. A lost archetype, you might ask? Here's a quote. An archetype is like an old watercourse along which the water of life has flowed for centuries, digging a deep channel for itself. The longer it has flowed in this channel, the more likely it is that sooner or later the water will return to its old bed. End quote. Carl Jung. See, archetypes are coded with a universal language that informs the soul. Themes that serve the soul's evolutionary impulse to become greater, to become embodied instruments of divine origin in human form, a language of light, of which without, we would be lost in this dim world. And since the dawn of time, archetypes have served the incarnating earthly experience to remind us of our divine origin and capability. And as an entrepreneurial community, we have not had a universal archetype to aspire towards. And as a result, we look outside of ourselves for guidance and to whom to model, when the truth of the matter is, whenever we look outside of ourselves, we run the risk of being disillusioned. And here is the importance of the archetype of the merchant. This is an internal North Star to point us in the direction of what business can be like when it is designed to benefit the whole of our humanity, instead of the current business paradigm that is designed solely for profit. And this archetypes come to us at a moment in time when business has become the dominant power structure on the planet, making it the first time in human history when the dominant power structure is malleable and can be oriented towards serving the whole. And since we are currently in the midst of this third industrial revolution that is creating an entrepreneurial boom, there exists a latent potential to create a real shift on the planet like never before. That is my prayer. And so in preparation for the release, I wanted to share with you today the introduction of the book that is titled The Clarion Call to the Merchants That Remember. It is meant to inspire a worldwide movement of biblical proportion, to inspire the entrepreneur to create business models that are both profitable, but most important, philanthropic, so that we can begin the restoration of our beautiful Mother Earth. And I believe that those who aspire towards this benevolent archetype of the merchant will feel the resonance in the timbre of my voice and the truth within the words of the book that will invoke memories of why you are here at this time and what your grander mission is. And I want to invite that if you feel a calling after listening to the Clarion call, please visit givingbusinesssoul.com to find out how you can become a part of this worldwide movement and learn the philosophy of the merchant. Thank you so much once again for being here and from listening from the bottom of your heart. Enjoy the recording. Oh, and one last thing. I want you to know that I see entrepreneurs as the creative agents or imaginal cells of the earth who are meant to give birth to a new human story. We each have a song to sing, a new song, and with that, a fresh and exquisite symphony will overtake the earth, and with it, a new universe will emerge, one that is of love and harmony. Much love, everyone. A clarion call to the merchants that remember. These structures, these systems, this matrix. There is a game that is played, divide and conquer. And it has done this exceptionally well, since on a global scale, we are seeing like never before the divide that exists between us. Whether the topic is government, religion, science, or business, we are mostly at odds. However, what we must understand and have compassion for is that we are simply in ignorance and have been veiled to that which is now becoming visible to more and more individuals throughout the planet. Religions, along with wisdom traditions around the world, including the mystery schools who have safeguarded sacred knowledge, have prophesied these times we are now living through. In the greater timeline of humanity's history, we are governed by a cycle of time known throughout many traditions as the Great Year, and in science it is known as the precession of the equinox, where the Earth moves through the 12 zodiac signs, each approximately 2,100 years in length, in the night sky, creating a span of 25,800 years. In the East, it is understood that we are leaving the Kali Yuga phase of humanity's journey, a dark period of time where humanity would enter a state of amnesia, forget its true origins, and would struggle to regain remembrance of its inherent divinity, not as something earned, but as an essence of its being. Woven into the very name that classifies every living being on the planet, human reveals the great truth. Hu in Sanskrit means God. Therefore, to be human is to be God-man. We are each divine beings, divine souls, who have incarnated into form, into matter as the human race. Through the lens of the spiritual eye, before our soul enters the earthly realms, we pass through the tree of life, what the shamanistic tradition says is the bridge between the other world and this world. There we are each given the divine spark, the Christic light, the Holy Spirit, a God-given intuition and light to guide us through the dimness of an earth struggling to remember its spiritual inheritance. In addition to this Christic light, we are also given a sacred wound. The sacred human wound of repression, denial, shame, rejection, guilt, separation also accompany the soul into the earth plane. It is the wound for becoming mortal. One of these wounds becomes our divine assignment, to transmute the pain of the human wound back into light, to merge the dark with the light, to reconcile all of our pain, to love ourselves back into wholeness. Ultimately, we are emissaries of light, here not to contribute to the darkness, but instead to transmute the darkness back to light. For the souls who have incarnated, which is to come into form, during this great transitional time, the gravity and weight of such a choice was known and accepted. We understood that we would be playing hospice to an old world with structures and systems that no longer serve humanity. Out of all the books from the Bible, the book of Revelation still remains the most mysterious, not only because modern scholars are mostly in agreement that the true author couldn't have been the same writer as the book of John, but in addition because of the heavy and distinct language throughout the book of Revelation, it is also said that it is the only book that could not have been tampered with. The etymology of apocalypse originated in Greece, and this is where its meaning comes from. Apocalypse means the great uncovering and the great unveiling. Of all the religious texts, the book of Revelation is written and coded with the most amount of symbolism and allegory. In Revelation, much is written about the four horsemen who appear with the opening of the seven seals, a time that would bring forth cataclysms that would result in an unprecedented amount of destruction. The four horses referenced here are science, religion, government, and business. These are the four structures that have been the underpinning of our society, and working together, they have created a blindfold over the eyes of humanity and have pushed us to the brink of destruction. The vibrational quality of these structures are rooted in fear, and together they have created a fear frequency cage, a matrix, designed to prod and pull at our wounds, triggering us emotionally to contribute to the dark side of our humanity. However, with every day that passes, more and more people are beginning to see through the illusion of the veiled reality we have lived behind for millennia. In other words, we are now uncovering and unveiling the truth behind the lies. When the human race learns to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will fall from the eyes of men. They shall then know truth, and more than that, they shall realize that from the beginning, truth has been in the world unrecognized, save by a small but gradually increasing number appointed by the lords of the dawn as ministers to the need of human creatures struggling to regain their consciousness of divinity. Manly P. Hall. This great turning and the great change will demand simply one thing of us: the reconciliation of our own shadows, our own darkness. The more we do, the more we see. We are entering a transitional period in our humanity's history, a time that has been promised throughout all ancient cultures under the disguise of different names, that when the completion of the great year occurred, the approximate 26,000-year cycle of time, humanity would have the ability to awaken fully into our spiritual heritage, allowing us to come into harmony with ourselves and the world around us. The completion of this cycle was in 2012, bringing to a conclusion the age of Pisces, the zodiac sign depicted by two fish being pulled apart, a representation of a time of duality, and in the greater timelines, the exiting of a masculine-dominant society otherwise known as patriarchy, a society rooted primarily in masculine principles, where men mostly hold the position of power, usually to the exclusion of feminine ideals such as harmony, unity, and life-affirming decisions. Due to the age of duality and the entrenched power structures as the four horsemen during the last 2,000 years, we have been directed to participate in a way of life that is not in respect or reverence to the natural world. On a global scale, we have been participating in a masculine, goal-oriented society, where our identities and self-worth are predicated on the attainment of outward goals. But how can a soul, made from the substance of God, housed in a body temple, be defined by finite accomplishment and satisfied by material possessions? We cannot, and here lies the great source of human suffering. Being goal-oriented is a patriarchal idea that many of us have participated in, and being so, it has left us sick, exhausted, and most importantly, unfulfilled. It is the great deception of success, chasing goals and more goals with the promise of happiness and fulfillment that never arrives, while simultaneously destroying the delicate ecosystems and accelerating the decline of the planet. Ultimately, seeking for fulfillment outside of ourselves is fundamentally flawed, because its premise is that something from the outside will fill an internal void. The template and blueprint we erected our current reality was done mostly to the exclusion of feminine principles, and as a result, we have created a mythical wasteland of sorts, bringing into reality the prophecies and myths that span throughout all traditions. Beyond even the interpretation of prophecies occurring during these times, science tells us that we are well into the sixth mass extinction on this planet, known as the Holocene extinction. We are witnessing the collapse, and we are chronologically taking note in the process. Every major ecological system is in decline and now accelerating. Best case scenario, by most scientific standards, we are about 80 years away, and in worst case scenarios, 8 to 15 years away from humanity's extinction event. Written into her code, Mother Earth has this almost unbearable loving capacity to annihilate herself in favor of becoming an even greater and more diverse expression of herself, as what is evident when we examine the fossil records of the last 5 extinction events. Every new version of herself, she has birthed an even more diverse and resilient ecological footprint, a true phoenix in every sense of the myth. We, humanity, have become a harmful cancer with the patriarchal matrix we have created. And as she has done 5 other times, she will either become a distant memory, or finally we can fulfill the prophecy of a golden age and evolve into the harmonious beings that we, humanity, are. Earth, Sophia, as she is known throughout many mystery schools and ancient religions, has deep significance and meaning to humanity at this time. Sophia means wisdom, and it is said that she is the primordial feminine, which is the invisible intelligence that informs nature, this awe-inspiring, interconnected way of life that sustains all of humanity. When we as humans disconnect from the feminine, which is to disconnect from nature, from Sophia, to the favor of the masculine principles, we create an imbalance that becomes unsustainable, which is the reality we find ourselves here in 2020 at the time of these writings. During the last 2,000 years, during the age of Pisces, humanity's journey was to experience duality fully, to experience the darkest side of our nature. And as the human story goes during this time period, a theme we can see throughout cultures, specifically the major world religion, is the heavy disregard to women throughout their holy books. Women were typically seen in a much lesser regard, and in some holy books, as far as seeing the woman as the origin of sin. And as a result of these deep-seated religious beliefs, it has taken women an extraordinary amount of grief to create equality in societies of developed countries. But still, when measured globally, the imbalance is obvious and evident. And when you have the construct of a reality in favor of the masculine and a goal-oriented society, there is a virus that eventually enters. It is the virus of greed, an energy that simply wants more for the sheer desire of it. It hungers and can never be satisfied. Blind it is to knowing that there is sufficient for everyone. This virus, invisible to the eye but energetically felt with the body, as this virus runs through society, it begins to demonstrate its very darkest side over time, the desire for power and dominance, the darker side of humanity, all symptoms from the disconnecting to the feminine from nature. When we study nature, we have the visibility to an awe-inspiring, interconnected web of life that is in constant evolution. Nature is not goal-oriented, but instead process-oriented. Nothing is in a hurry, and yet all gets accomplished. Nature, as we know, has been referred to as Mother Nature since time immemorial, and is considered the storehouse of feminine wisdom, the Holy of Holies, Sophia. The feminine way of being doesn't have goals and is simply all about evolution, a continual process of change and refinement that ultimately leads to a greater expression of itself, an always more diverse and whole version of herself. She is in constant process of death and rebirth. And what becomes apparent is that there is an evolutionary pattern that is woven into the very fabric, a perfect geometry. Through a detailed lens, we begin to see a ratio that surfaces all throughout the natural world. It is referred to in many ways, including the fingerprint of God, the divine proportion, the golden mean, but most commonly known as the phi ratio, a natural expression from nature that shows up in everything from sunflowers, spirals of galaxies, seashell formations, to the growth patterns of leaves on trees. A beautiful mathematical expression of evolution and motion. A perfect ratio to govern growth in the universe installed by God. It was Leonardo da Vinci who made the world aware through his art that not only nature was governed by this perfect ratio, but indeed the human body. With his famous painting of the Venturian Man, he showed that the vessel, the body temple, had been designed with the phi ratio, the fingerprint of God. Our overall design then is that we have been created a divinely proportioned temple to house our divine soul with Christic potential. The universal creator has formed two things in his own image. The first was the cosmic system with its myriad of suns and moons and planets. The second was man, in whose nature the entire universe existed in miniature. A quote from Pythagoras. Pythagoras, Da Vinci, along with a myriad of other giants in history, including Yeshua, in which Christianity was founded on, all have been alluding to the reconciliation of the feminine spirit. The totality of Yeshua's teaching can be distilled into the kingdom of God is within you, which points in the direction of home, the body, and the human journey to a geometry of love and harmony on Mother Earth. Survival of our species is now predicated on how soon we, as a society, can begin the metamorphosis process of moving from a patriarchal, masculine-driven ideology to a balanced society where our relationships to nature, the feminine, and our bodies come into loving harmony. And although the task at hand may feel insurmountable, humanity's greatest miracles are yet to be seen. So what has the power in society to create an ecologically sound evolutionary leap of this kind? What can lead a paradigm shift of this kind? Whenever you want to see who holds the most power in a society, you are simply to scan the horizon and see who owns the largest buildings. The largest buildings always represent the dominant power structure of a society. In the beginning of our known history, kingdoms represented the largest buildings, and at the time, kings and queens held the most power. Later, churches became the largest buildings, and their leaders then became the most influential. Within time, government buildings would become the largest buildings in cities. Presidents and politicians therefore grew in power and stature. And when we now look out into the world, what we see is that business buildings are the largest and by far making evident that business is the current dominant power structure on our planet. Business, as you remember, is also represented as one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. In perfect timing, and for the first time in human history, the current dominant power structure is malleable and has become accessible to all. Whenever being a king, a pope, or president is reserved by bloodlines and inaccessible to the mass of humanity, those of virtue and true nobility will mostly be silenced and kept from positions of influence in favor of the self-serving narrative of the time. However, with the landscape of our modern world, entrepreneurship has become available to all, making influence accessible to the virtuous. The current technological infrastructure is also allowing for a barrier of entry so low into business that some of the most innovative entrepreneurship is coming from less developed countries. The embedded power structure in business gives entrepreneurs the ability to wield collaborative human ingenuity in any direction. Up until now, that direction has been goal-oriented and self-serving, causing an unparalleled amount of destruction as symbolized in the apocalypse. However, during this great turning and the great change that is upon us, we each have the ability to infuse the soul into business, bringing the transmutation of the dominant power structure of one that is solely used for profit and gain to one instead that is used for the love of humanity. And when enough of us infuse soul into business, the great turning will come, and we will welcome our human potential like a golden light dawning in the horizon. To bring this reality into fruition, we will need assistance from the higher realms. In all religions and mystical traditions, symbolism, allegory, and archetypes are said to represent the language of the soul, the language that bridges the worlds. These stories, allegories, and archetypes are messengers from the holy higher worlds, giving humanity an indication of what has spiritual integrity. And until now, the world has been void a significant archetype, forgotten and erased, waiting for this great turning. It is the archetype of the merchant. For the seeker of truth, the mystical side of most religions tend to arrive to the understanding of something that is known as the Merkaba. The Merkaba is normally represented symbolically by the Star of David, known in stories from holy books as the chariot of fire, and in other traditions, it represents the anchoring of heaven into earth, the unification of spirit with matter, bringing union to the father and the mother. Its origin stems from Egypt, where the word has three distinct characteristics when broken apart. Mer means light, Ka, spirit, Ba, body. Merkaba, light, spirit, body. Mer is therefore light. And to chant is to sing, but more of a bhakti, a devotional song from the soul. It is to devote oneself to the divine. A mer chant is then he or she who is devoted to the light of consciousness. These will be individuals who use their business in a benevolent way, in a way that serves humanity. It is the soul-centered entrepreneur who aspires to something higher, a sacred purpose that ultimately brings harmony, prosperity, and true fulfillment to themselves and those in their field. This becomes the energy that permeates the individuals when their consciousness has been transformed from survival to service. And from that place, the merchant will stand as a pillar of light, devoted to the restoration of our humanity. If you have always felt that you are here to make a difference in the world, to give back in a grand way, and you have felt that you wanted that expression to come through the modality of business, then you are a merchant, simply remembering your divine assignment. As the structures come crumbling down, a new world will bloom from the heart of these merchants. These individuals who have in their genetic code a disposition for business while having an altruistic heart are found everywhere around the world. And unbeknownst to them, they will simply be waiting for the call, the Clarion call. However, what must be understood is that the path of the merchant is no easy endeavor. A radical transformation in consciousness will be required, but what you can be assured is that if you are feeling a pull in your body, you will also be equal to the task that you have been given. The pull comes from the soul, and it always knows its divine assignment. It is our true north, and it will pull us even through the darkest of times. The spark of the Christ, the Christos. See, there comes a point in every soul's journey through the earth plane when the illusion of fulfillment from anything outside of itself comes to an end, and one begins the earnest seeking of wisdom. It has always been the most adept and learned among society who have ventured on this path. The initiates, shining human examples who have set the world afire and who have left the blueprint of such attainments. Yeshua, Buddha, Emerson, Da Vinci, Francis d'Assisi, Teresa de Avila, to name a few participants of the great work. This is the work of unifying our highest or spiritual nature with that of our humanness, the bringing of heaven into earth. This unification is when one reconciles both the light and dark aspect of ourselves and come into full recognition of the God essence within, not as a mere intellectual understanding, but as a felt experience within the body, a visceral knowing that the kingdom of a God is indeed within us. We are all of it. Only after we reconcile the opposites within us, unify the oppositions, both light and dark, both masculine and feminine, can we truly begin to share with the world the divine code that is latent within us all. Do as I do, and you can do even greater works than I, say the greatest avatar, Yeshua. Until we own the fact that we are both light and dark, humanity will continue to project its dark nature out into the world in the form of judgments, perpetuating the fear frequency cage in which we see the world caught up in now. Transcending this duality requires that we forgive ourselves for all we have deemed unforgivable. We judge the world and its appeared cruelness of those things we have not accepted that we are as well. Only then can we come into our divinity. As the great initiate Ralph Waldo Emerson so brilliantly stated, man is God in ruin. And when enough of us come into this truth, enough merchants, we begin the great work of restoring harmony and balance to this errant world. Then commerce will hold the great key for the future of humanity, and its significance again woven into the very name, as treasures are always hidden in plain sight. Commerce. Com means with, together. Myrrh, light. Urs, the fertility goddess known as Mother Earth. Commerce is therefore those who will be coming together in the light for Mother Earth. The restoration of our beautiful earth will begin with a legion of soul-centered merchants using the power of business in the service of love. We have reached a point in the evolutionary journey of humanity where we are being asked to remember our divinity, and with it, our divine assignment. And more than ever, we must keep close the words of a great writer. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life, it's not death, it's indifference. A quote from Eli Wiesel.